what you
move ahead real quick, and thanks, Melvin.
Sure, no problem.
One of the things that the board has to make a decision about is how do we proceed? Do you try to go above the calculated tax cap? And I would caution you very strongly about that. I think it always divides your community. And I do think on a one-year basis, we can provide a good budget. The $441,000 gap for 1 year, we hope with great advocacy would be closed, and maybe we'd even do a little bit better. We could continue the type of programs this community demands and wants to support. And our biggest concern, if we can really be effective with advocacy, then becomes the out years, and are we sound on a multi-year basis. When I look at this chart, I think it's really important. It's been a tough time to be a school board member. The blue line is the local share, and it held pretty flat for a good period of time. And then all of a sudden, about 2008, 2009, the local share began to climb. And our partners, the state government, right around the same time, we experienced some economic hardship, and our partners backed off. And what board members have faced is the challenge of explaining to people in the community why we're cutting staff and programs at the same time we're raising taxes. Because our partners have forced us to shift more of the burden of supporting our program onto local taxpayers. I'll try to show that in the next chart. Now, when I ask, would you? Basically, the highest the state share has ever reached for Amherst is 37.2%. It's fallen between 2008 to about 32.5%. That's a 5% shift of burden onto our local taxpayers. Inversely, the lowest percentage that was paid by local taxpayers was 58.3% in 2009. It's gotten as high as 63.8% and stayed just below 64%. So you've seen, again, the burden being shifted from our partners, the federal government and the state government, onto local taxpayers. And again, you face those perplexing questions. Why are we cutting but taxes are still going up? And we really need to overcome that through our lobbying effort. New York State experienced the same problems with the hardship. We had 1 year where revenues fell, okay, from 2009 to 2010. But really over the last 6 years, we've had about a $9.5 billion increase in revenue. People from Amherst are sending more money than ever in the form of income taxes, sales taxes, fees on many, many things to Albany. And Albany is choosing to send less of it back to us to support education. And that's a problem. When we look back a decade, in 2004, a third of every dollar this is local money, we've taken out the federal, because federal is tied to a very narrow purpose. We know in education we get federal dollars. There's to support handicapped children, second language instruction, the needs of impoverished students. They're tied to delivering programs to certain populations. But 32 cents of every dollar we sent to Albany a decade ago came back to localities to support education. It's down to 26.87 cents. And actually, I would presume for the most recent year, it's going to go back up, because the tax cap is holding local revenues down, and last year we did get a $1.1 billion increase in state aid. So I think this percentage will start to move in the right direction for those of us who are concerned about education. But when we look at it, our politicians frequently say K-12 education is a New York State priority. But when we look at the increase in state spending over the last 6 years, state revenues, 9.5 billion, of which only 140 million more. Let's take the B out of there so it's confusing. 140 million more have come back to localities in aid to education. That's at the margin, only 1.48% of new revenues being directed to support education. Where we used to benefit from 1/3 of every dollar that went to Albany came back to localities to support education. That shift of burden has been going on statewide. And I've worked in advocacy for three years with the Rural Schools Association, and you know what? We really fought some battles and we weren't getting very far. But when you start to see this type of response, this is a question in the recent Siena poll. And believe me, politicians, the budget before they stand for election in November, they look at these polls and they listen to the public. If we can get our parents, our district employees, and really those people who talk to us about keeping taxes down, if we can get them engaged in effective advocacy, we think that's critical. Good, well-structured question in this Siena poll. Do you think right now New York spends too little on education, the right amount on education, or New York spends too much on education? When you look at the results overall, 56% indicated too little, 14% indicated too much. A lot of people right in the middle. But when you look at the crosstab section of that poll, it really shows that people of all political affiliations, both parties and independents, and that's who the politicians watch very closely, people across the conservative, moderate, liberal spectrum, all said too little. All racial and ethnic groups, all regions of the state, and particularly strong support was found among the 35 to 50, 18 to 34 and the 35 to 54 age group. Those are primarily the age of parents who send their children to public schools. And moms care greatly about the education of their children. It shows really a difference between males and females. We face the opportunity of working together. At a minimum, we have $529,000 of gap elimination adjustment remaining after the governor's proposed increase. That being realized would take care of the $441,000 gap that exists, and we would be able to really look at making years 2 and 3 of this budget really a little bit more sound. I think it's been a very tough time to be Board of Education members. I appreciate that anybody here or statewide would have taken on the responsibilities. I think it's been hard to explain to people. We were being forced to cut positions and narrow down the program offerings we have, and I think people have really sensed now that even though New York's a high-cost state, we spend a lot of money compared to other states on education, but people are sensing that programs they value are being eliminated, and I think if we can get involved parents, this Saturday we're going to attend a Erie County School Boards Association advocacy program. We've got 2 board members who will get up there Saturday. Several members of key employee groups are also supportive. And as we reach out, we've got to partner with parents in all segments of the community. Those people who are most upset about property tax increases need to understand that it's not just a function. Many of them assume it's mismanagement or poor decision making on the part of the district. A good deal of it is our partners have let us down. They've shifted the burden back on local taxpayers. And as I said, people from Amherst, are not sending less money to Albany than they did in the past. They're sending more. And we're getting less of it back to support a function that is critical to our future. I would recommend to the board that you not go for an override. It can be misunderstood and tend to divide the community. I think we can try to hit a sweet spot in the budget with good advocacy. I think our effort working together, pulling together all segments of the community would be more advantageous on a long-term basis than potentially dividing the community if you ask them to go above the cap. Even with the quirks that Melanie pointed out, where we end up with a negative, I don't think that was ever anticipated. We've got to put the burden back on the assembly people and the senators and the governor. And the first step I'd ask people to do is go to our website as early as tonight or tomorrow morning and sign the petition by the Erie County School Boards Association. And we'll be working with the building leaders and other people. We can't become too political, but we do need to make sure that the pressure is placed where it can make a difference. And that's on our state legislators. Okay? Certainly any questions from the board for either Mel's presentation or mine?
If I could just add about the petition, the goal of the Erie County School Board Association is to get 1,000 people on the petition. So far, there's been about 750. There ought to be 1,000 people from Amherst. All right? So everyone ought to go there, have their spouses do it, wherever they can do it, because Dr. Fraser's right. I mean, they need to hear it, that we need to get this funding restored, and they're listening, and there's some pressures being put on the governor. So, but they need to hear it from everyone. I mean, the 7 or 8 people sitting around this table, they know how many of us there are. There's not many in the state, so they do numbers, and they can figure it out. So we need everyone to help with that. So
working in advocacy, I would say they expect the superintendent to come in and complain and pressure. They expect board presidents to come in, but they also understand the board's very busy with their budget and operating their district. They label a superintendent the hired gun. When they hear from members of the community, and particularly when organizations that meet regularly and support education and have a newsletter and communicate regularly, when they hear from that element, you have an impact. And it's an awkward process in Albany, but they get back through their caucus that we're feeling pressure from our home community, and we need to make sure education's needs are addressed. Okay? Certainly any other questions from the board? Thanks.
Go ahead.
So in your numbers then, that you did, that left us with you didn't include anything with any potential more coming back from the GEA.
That's correct.
So-
Just the governor's proposal.
So everything there is what we know.
What we know at this point in time, what we saw in the governor's proposal, which specifically was about $10,000 or $11,000 in foundation aid, and then just over $200,000 in gap elimination. So just what the governor proposed at this point is in that budget, as well as just the other sources of revenue. Nothing regarding any reserves or fund balance or anything like that.
Dr. Fraser, I don't know if it's too late. Is there any room on the our district
I think
panel for perhaps
we had room for one more
parents or
person.
community members?
Yep.
Do you have everyone listed? Because I know that you mentioned
I'm sorry.
2 board members. I thought there was more than 2 board members.
We initially opened it up for board members, asked them to respond, and then filled the remaining spots. But
Who are the 2 you have?
I have more than 2 board members.
That's why I'm
Oh,
saying.
okay.
Yes.
But you only mentioned 2. That's why I
Okay.
was wondering.
Yeah.
I know Deb's not.
But we still have room if